Well, thanks for viewing. We're going to talk about a Rockola 448 today. Not that it's that unique a box. I'll show it to you here in a minute, but it sure had some interesting problems. So that's what this is all about, learning from boxes that have a lot of problems and getting them working. It's satisfying, and this certainly was one of them. So it won't be a real long video. What we're going to talk about are mainly selection problems, write-in problems. This box, it was one of the first, maybe the first, to have the 3-digit 123 system, which turned out to be, over the years, very reliable, but it was complex. It had additional components, a selection control box, and the credit unit had extra components for it. So the keyboard was complex. So problems developed, and they're not easy. And I'll show you what I had to do. I had to go for the Rockola troubleshooting guide. I found one from an old operator for the 447 to 452. That bailed me out because the manual was not enough in this case. So we're going to talk about that. I want to show you a shorted power supply. I did not check the rectifiers in this power supply because they're always usually good. But this one, the current limiting bulb, which I used to test all unknown equipment, it lit up like a beacon, so I knew I had a short. And I'll show you what it was, and so you can look for that, because it's very important. And then just the couple other problems that people that have put in improper components. Sometimes not even close, and it just goes to show that you really should check everything, because fuses, transistors in the output area. And so let's get started. I'll show you what the box looks like. It really came back to life in a spectacular way, really. It sounds wonderful, and it's a sort of a pretty box. So I'll show it to you here now, and then we'll go over some problems. So here we have the 448. Now, I like the glass pattern on this. I think it's cool, and this glass is pretty good. The top glass is really terrific. This was little insert there was found on the floor of the box. Never forget to look on the floor for missing pieces. It can be rewarding. This is sort of messed up with some super glue, but no, overall, this was a decent box, missing only the cash drawer there. I'm going to have to try to get this open and I want to show you a couple features. So now the box is open. Now, note that the previous owner, on the 160 machines, they all have 2 write-in arms, and this arm, of course, is okay. But look at this. Somebody just simply... wait a minute, no, I'm sorry, it's the wrong one here. Someone just went and cut all the wires to the hammer coils and the wipers, and I suspect it was maybe because either they rotated this backwards and ruined the wipers, or the coils shorted. But to be honest, and I'll tell the future buyer here, I did not replace this, because one write-in arm that works is sufficient. It just takes about another 1 or 2 seconds to find the hot spot. But as you know, the 100 selection machines just had one write-in arm, so I didn't think that was a deal breaker, and I didn't feel like spending 3 hours to take the mech out and take the readout arm out, and the pin bank out, and the write-in arm out, and then put the new write-in arm in again. It works fine, but I wanted to point that out. Now, here's a fairly cool feature. This one has a lever here that you can then pull up the... Oh my! I don't know if I can do it with. I'll show you here in a second. I was trying to show you the lever here that you pull, and it releases the whole keyboard up. So this is wonderful for servicing, and of course you have to clean all these contacts and move all your slide switches in and out about 25 times. And I also check continuity of the wires across some of these across the keyboard, just to be sure there's not an open key that isn't making good contact, you really should do that, or at least do it if you're having selection problems. And then I service the lights. But I just wanted to point out that feature of the box. So we're going to go on to some of the problems now. Okay, now here's the back of the power supply in the 448. I do not even plug in these boxes at the home. The first thing I do when I get home is I take out the power supply and look at the cord, the switches, make sure they're good. And then I go in, and in this particular power supply, there's several fuses here, but there's 3 capacitors to replace, 2 100s and then a 1200 in this one. And I check the diodes, check the major resistors. I clean the contacts of the play control relay. And on the front, I reseat the right-in relay and the start relay. And these 2 full wave bridge rectifiers supply your DC. You know, I haven't been checking them because they're always good. But in this case, I plugged in the amp and the power supply, and I do it with the amp through this current limiting bulb. Now, Uncle Doug on YouTube has a very nice video on how to set this up. But basically, you've got a 150 to 250 watt bulb that serves, the higher the wattage of the bulb, the less resistance, so it doesn't really interfere with the circuit too much. But if there's a short through your load, in this case the power supply, well, the light will light up like a beacon. And after 3 years, well, it finally lit up this time, and so I knew there was a problem. And so when there is a major short, you're hoping it isn't the transformer, okay? But this transformer didn't smell, it didn't have any melted wax coming out of it. It looked good. So the next most suspicious guys were these 2 rectifiers here, and I'll show you how to test them here. So it's not difficult to remove the rectifier, which is a full wave bridge rectifier, which is basically 4 diodes. And the diodes should all have a forward voltage drop of around 0.6, and in reverse bias, it should be outside limits. They really don't allow current through. So let's just check this, and you check it with your multimeter on diode mode, and we'll just check. We'll check this one first here, and that's shorted. Well, there's your bad boy right there. They never should be shorted. It should either be OL, outside limits, or around 0.6, and the other way, it's also shorted. Now this one, this diode, is still good. See, this one reads 0.5 volts. That's a normal, and the other, and it's outside limits. So I just wanted to point out, if you get a short, I think there were 2 here. Let me see. This one is normal, or pretty good. And this is okay. And then this one was, so there was just one that was shorted. But that was enough to blow up my, just light the current limiting bulb. So I replaced that, and then we were good to go. We got good voltages. Now, once you're satisfied that your power supply components are good inside, then you go to the front, these 2 Molex connectors. We've talked about this before, and check voltages. And here's what it should look like. Now, I want to apologize. The information I gave before on the 47100 power supply was correct, except that I forgot about the pink, blue, plus 30 volts DC on pin 15 of the white Molex connector. So these are the voltages you want to see before you put your power supply in the machine. You check it, you replace those 3 capacitors, check the diodes, and now, of course, check those full wave bridge rectifiers. But then be sure all these voltages are good. Here's the ones that come off the red Molex connector. And I showed you this before. This is a review, and I don't want to dwell on it, but this is important. You want to know your voltages are good, because how's your jukebox going to work if you don't supply it with what it needs? So, And this is just a note on the, not to confuse you, but the earlier power supply for the 442 and 444 is similar, except it's lacking one. It doesn't have the purple-yellow wire that goes to the mute relay, and it also does not have the plus 33 volts DC on pin 15 because it only has one rectifier in there and instead of two. So that's enough on that. So let's go to the selection problem. I did all my selection system servicing. I checked the ADR relay, the credit unit. I cleaned out I cleaned the keyboard and all the contacts up there. I went to the selection control panel, checked the fuses in there, reseated the K6 and K7 relays, reseated all the gang connectors on the side, and so I plug in my box expecting good things. I left credit on. I put it on free play, and I had a select light, which is good, but that's only the 20. That's on the 25 volt AC circuit. I did not have any plus 33 volts DC because that's what you need to get the first digit light, second digit light, and for the rest of the action to happen. And so I had basically a dead keyboard. So the manual was a little sketchy on this. I really was not able to fix it based on what I could gather from the manual. So I salvaged this guy, and this is the AMR published just a few years ago, the troubleshooting guide for the Rockola 447, 452. When the 447 and 448 came out, the selection system was entirely new, and I think they felt they should supply a separate guide for this, as it was much more complicated than the previous two-digit system, a letter and a number. But at any rate, sure, they have a couple real terse comments here at the beginning. I have to laugh at some of this, how they, if I can find it. Some of the solutions to problems are just, well, replace the defective control board. Well, okay. And that is a good thing to do. If you have known good components, that does speed up your servicing, but that's just not very helpful when it comes to learning. So what I really had to do was go to Troubleshooting Guide 4 on page, what is that, page 15 of this guide. And I just wanted to highlight some things here. You didn't have the 33 volt DC, and here's what they guide you or have you go through here. And if you want to know why there's selection problems in this box, look what you got to go through here. The 33 volts, okay, it starts at the power supply. It comes out through a cable connector. So the connector could be dirty, there could be a loose wire there. It goes to the credit unit and goes through the ADR relay, which we've talked about that a million times. That relay has its hands and contacts going through it, even when it's not actuated. So, and I had cleaned the contacts of that. And then it goes to the selection control box. There's a fuse, and then it goes out of there on the red, white. It goes over to the inside the selection control box. There's the printed circuit board there. So it winds its way through there, and then it goes out of the printed circuit board up to the keyboard, around the keyboard, back to the printed circuit board, then out of the printed circuit board, over through the reset. And never forget that reset button. That needs to be cleaned, and it needs to be making continuity. It's in this circuit, and then back over to the credit unit again, and then finally to ground. That's your circuit. Do you know how many components and connections are involved there? It's daunting. So that was why I reached for this. So what was my problem? Well, it didn't take long. I got 30 volts here, and I got 30 volts going into the ADR relay, but coming out of the ADR relay, I had like 11 volts. So it was dirty contact in the ADR relay in the credit unit. And I had already cleaned that rascal. So we cleaned it again, and then we got our problem resolved. So that was the first issue. Had that not happened, sure, I would have swapped in another selection control circuit board. I've got a few extra. I would have swapped in, reseated the K6 and K7 relays, cleaned all the connections again, went after this rascal. But no, it was the ADR relay, which has been a problem. And when the 464, they got rid of that. They put in a sequence N relay with a capacitor and got rid of a lot of the headaches of this relay. But okay, let's go to the next problem. The other selection problem I was having when I got the ADR relay cleaned, and I had first digit light, second digit light. When the third digit was a 4 to a 7, I had no problem because that utilizes the K4 relay, and everything worked fine. But when I went to punch in a third digit that was 0 through 3, my right-in motor would go for it. A K4 relay would stop at the correct place that I had selected, and actually the wobble plate solenoid worked, the current limiting bulb worked, and I even opened up the credit unit, and because there's two other relays. This is the selection impulse switch off the debit coil and of course your ADR relay. I watched them. They both worked, but my hammer pin never got hammered. And that was for all selections that ended in 0, 1, 2, or 3. Well, I thought first place I'm going to go is go over to the selection control box and get to those jumpers. Now, I hope this... They're right here. K4 relay is only involved for if the or it actuates for 4 to 7 as your third digit. But if you have 0, 1, 2, 3, there's 4 connections there, and I went in and reseated them, and nothing good happened. They're in the selection control box. So I thought, well, what could this be? And in the 160 selection machine, the hammer coils are the two here, the A and the B, are the inner circuits. So they get actuated, and then only half of them get actuated when the third digit is selected. So if the third digit is a 0 through 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, they go through these two wires here, and I just traced them, and I traced them all the way back over here again into our selection control panel. I thought, well, these are going to be our bad boys here, K6 and K7. They're not getting the power over to that circuit board, and that's why the hammer coil isn't working, but everything else is. So I actually reseated K6 and K7 in the selection control panel, and I got a winner. I also reseated all those jumper plugs, but that's what it took to solve the problem. And so you need a wiring diagram sometimes. You need that troubleshooting guide, and of course you need a manual. But we got it done. One more thing, and then we'll call it a day. I spend a lot of time on the amplifier. I'm not so great on cosmetics. My customers will tell you I don't restore the cabinets much except to replace glass. But I think a jukebox should sound good, so I spend a lot of time on the amp. And that includes, in these, on the 448, it has a germanium, 4 germanium heatsink transistors. They look like this. And they're, you know what, they're usually still good. But never fail to go in and check those, check them, and check the 4 resistors that are in the heatsink. I think it's very important because, and this box, and I didn't know whether the amp worked or not. I don't even plug it in until I service it, but we had 3 correct germanium heatsink transistors in there. And look at this guy. I don't even think it's a germanium transistor. Somebody just threw it in there as the fourth because it looked similar. But look at this. Look at the leads aren't nearly as deep. These are pushed into connections that have to be secure. This guy was sort of just laying in there. Human error and poor servicing and sloppy work causes a lot of problems. And I'm going to end with that. I wanted to show you this, how terrible that was, and hopefully none of you will do that. It's a 2N2869 is the replacement germanium heatsink transistor for these. They're a little pricey. You probably ought to replace both, and there's two on each channel, so if you're going to replace one, replace the other one on that channel. If you can't find them, I know Jukebox Revival in the Netherlands has them in their catalog. You'd have to pay the shipping, but I just wanted to make that point. It is just sometimes you see terrible things, and which will lead to more terrible things. Well, I hope you get something out of these videos. I'm trying to highlight problems that I think are going to be common and are a little more difficult than just, putting a heat gun to the gripper motor and getting it going. The right-in problems they've been the biggest challenge for me. I know the videos don't get, a whole lot of viewing. They're certainly not going to go viral. But if you have questions or if there's something you want me to cover in a future video, then you can give me a note on YouTube. I probably won't have too much now. We're getting out of the season to pick up jukeboxes, so but if I get something interesting in the next couple of months, I'll certainly pass it on. All right, till then, enjoy your day.